Eyes wide open.
If you think Dogman is just a legend, keep watching. From shadowy figures stalking rural backroads, from towering wolf-like creatures emerging from the tree line, these sightings have left witnesses shaken, speechless, and forever changed. If you've ever wondered what really growls in the wilderness after sunset, you're in the right place. Don't forget to subscribe, and let's take a look.
I'm sure you've heard of Bigfoot, but have you heard of the Dogman? Apparently, this creature hangs out around the land between the lakes in Kentucky. It's widely known as the beast of the LBL. I just found out how far and wide this thing's travel, and I must say, it's a little scarier than Bigfoot. So the Dogman is essentially a werewolf that never changes back into a man. It's just permanently part man. Which part? I don't know. But apparently it spends a lot of time in Marshall County, Kentucky. The folklore there is rich with stories of the Dogman, including a story from the 80s about a family who got mauled to death by a mysterious creature. Now, it seems that Dogman's violent days are behind him, because despite numerous sightings, that was the last killing ever recorded. I've never ever heard of Bigfoot doing anything like that, so I'm calling it. It was Dogman. Who do you think would win in a fight? Dogman or Bigfoot?
I already know none of you are going to believe what I'm about to tell you, but I promise it's true. This happened like 15 years ago. I know it's going to sound like BS, but I saw a werewolf. I know, it sounds like I'm making it up, but if I didn't see it myself, I wouldn't believe it either. But let me tell you what happened. So I'm driving home. I got the kids in the car with me, and I'm in a van, and I drive past this one part of the road that has like this cliff thing on the right side. And out of nowhere, something jumps off that cliff that I've been told is like 20 feet high. I cannot judge height, but I've been told it was 20 feet high and lands like this. See, squirrels land like that too. So he landed like a squirrel, but he was huge. So he lands right in the middle of the road, turns, looks at me, stands up, then runs. And he looked like this. Now, this is somebody's like fan art, not a real picture, duh. But this is the most accurate that I could find that actually looks like the one I saw. So I immediately call my mom and dad. My dad answers. I tell him I'm like frantic. I'm like, oh my gosh, I just saw like a werewolf. It jumped off the cliff thing. It was like 2 vans tall. I still stand by that. That's how tall it was. So I don't know. I don't know how tall. Like 12 feet or something. It was huge, huge. So my dad says it was probably a barn owl. They're pretty big. A what? It was not a barn owl. Oh my God. This thing scared me to death. Terrified me. Well, I tell the story. Everybody's like, ha ha, yeah, whatever. So then I don't ever tell anybody again. But in Kentucky, not far from here, Kentucky Lake is known for having werewolves.
All of a sudden I heard this huffing, like someone running, but more like growling running. It was hard to explain. I looked and I saw a upright figure that was not totally human running at me. And so I took off running in the snow, and I hit the driveway of the lodge. And this driveway was very steep. And what would happen is when the snow would melt, the water would go down and it would form ice. When I hit that driveway, I slipped. I basically went tobogganing down to the bottom. I actually went through, the door was on a hinge, and then I went down to the basement because that's where I was staying. And I hid in my room, which didn't have any windows, and sat there and looked out the door at the sliding glass doors to see if this thing had followed me. And I didn't say anything to anybody.
Michigan isn't just home to the Great Lakes and brutal winters. It's home to one of the most enduring and infamous cryptid legends in America. From logging camps in the 1800s to modern sightings in small towns today, nearly every region in northern Michigan has its own story about the Dogman. Ask around long enough and someone will swear they've seen it, heard it, or know someone who has. A creature that looks part man, part wolf, and all nightmare. Michigan's most famous cryptid is the Dogman. The first widely documented Dogman encounter dates back to 1887 in Wexford County. 2 lumberjacks claimed a dog-headed creature, over 6 feet tall, stood upright at the tree line and watched them silently. It wasn't running or attacking, just observing. More sightings followed across Michigan's old lumber towns. The descriptions were uncannily consistent. 6 to 7 feet tall, with blue or amber eyes, a canine head, and a man-like torso and shoulders. And it always appeared when someone was alone, deep in the woods, like it was hoping to bestow fear upon people. In the 1930s, a French immigrant living near Paris, Michigan, reported hearing scratching at his cabin door late at night. When he opened it, he saw a huge dog on all fours, but then it slowly rose to stand upright and towered over him. Panicked, he fired his rifle, but the creature didn't run or scream. It simply tilted its head and studied him, as if it recognized the man. Then it turned and walked calmly back into the trees, and the man left Michigan the very next morning, never to return. In the 1950s and 60s, Dogman sightings spiked again. In 1961, a watchman in Reed City claimed a wolf-like figure was standing upright outside his paper mill window, staring directly at him. Then, in 1987, local DJ Steve Cook released The Legend, a novelty song about the Dogman. The song opened a floodgate. Calls poured into the station of people claiming they had seen Dogman for years before the song existed. A woman said she hit a massive dog with her car and watched in horror as it stood up on two legs and ran into the woods. And then came the Gable film in 2007, appearing to show the Dogman chasing someone through the forest to help put the Dogman of Michigan on the map. Hunters, truckers, hikers, and even law enforcement officers have all quietly reported the same thing, a tall, upright canine moving with disturbing intelligence. But what are people seeing? Many skeptics and outsiders believe that it's just a misidentification, that Michigan's wolves and black bears can stand briefly, and that people are just imagining things. Some cryptozoologists suggest that it is an unclassified canid species, something capable of occasional upright movement, but others connect it to something darker. Many native traditions include powerful wolf spirits or shapeshifters, leading some to believe that Dogman sightings may be a modern manifestation of older spiritual archetypes, and some insist it's something else entirely. But as the mystery of what it is still unsolved, the sightings continue. Hunters claim to hear bipedal footsteps tracking them from behind. Campers report amber eyes reflecting from unnaturally high in the trees, and some describe a howl unlike any wolf, coyote, or known animal in the Great Lakes region. Whether it's a cryptid, a spiritual entity, or a creature science hasn't identified yet, the Dogman remains Michigan's most iconic and terrifying legend.
On December 20th, 2022, Rich and I were down investigating in an area that he calls the Pit down in Hocking Hills. What we found was very disturbing. We found a deer kill unlike anything we had ever seen before.
That's the Dogman track. Right here. Look at that. How wide. His toes went down in. It was a vicious attack of some kind on that deer. And that wasn't coyotes, because if it was coyotes, see, Dave, if it was coyotes, no, I said, if you see coyotes, this whole area would be all matted down from dogs. You know what I mean? There'd be hundreds of dog prints around here, or coyote tracks. It ate that entire deer and left the innards. It ate the whole entire deer. Bones and all. There's no bones except for that one piece of spine right there. I heard something like a rustling, big, something walking, and up there where those trees are, going across there, the creek, just on the other side of that, I heard, the quick, and then a rustling, and that's why I stopped. Maybe whatever got that deer is in front of us. I don't know. So we'll see. We'll see. I first went out and the picture of a Dogman about 5 years ago. And I don't know where it came from. It was just there in the forest. Looking at me, I was looking at it. It didn't growl at me. It just showed me his teeth, and he raised his head up and sniffing, and it just took off. And then when I went back to the cabin, this thing followed me home. And it has clawed both of my trees, took a frontal bite out of one of my trees, peed on the cabin all around it, jumped on the roof, and it took a frontal bite out of one of my other trees, right through the bark, right into the white meat of the tree. And to me, being a male species at the time, being out here alone, the only thing I was thinking of was like, he's either calling me out or he's saying, get out. Usually they come out. Usually the colder it is, the better they like it, for some reason. January, February. And then, they kick things up probably about around the end of the summer again. They come back. And, but this is, really rare because like today, they were here today, fresh tracks today, of a Dogman. This area right here, I came in here one time, and I found 3 deer hides. It's like it just ripped right off the deer, not cut, and they peeled it off. The whole carcass, the whole, like a dress. One there, one laying there, and one laying long ways right here, and blood all over the area. If you're out in the woods and you run across, say, a Dogman, same thing as a Bigfoot. When you see it, it'll stop, you stop. There's where the line is. And, my suggestion to somebody that sees it, try not to show no fear pheromone out. Let it out. Or, because I think that's what he did to me. Because when I first saw it, he showed me his teeth. He didn't growl. He showed me his teeth and he's sniffing the air. I think he was, wanting to smell, fear pheromone, to attack. But I don't show fear out there. And it just, takes off. So I said, for people who see it, just stay vigilant. Just, don't accidentally, don't run or don't, yell or holler or anything. Just, you see him, he sees you. And, take it from there. If he does come attack, I don't know what to tell you on that one. Yeah.
I saw this. I had no idea what it was when I saw it. This is what I saw. I promise you. I'm originally from El Paso, but I have been living in the Houston area for the last 10 years. So every Christmas for the holidays, my husband and I make the trip and we drive from Houston all the way to El Paso. This is about 3 or 4 years ago. Around this time, the drive to El Paso was starting to weigh on us. We were, getting tired and we were having to switch more often, especially this day that we decided to leave because we had both been working all day and we decided to leave later on in the day and arrive late at night so that we can just get to my parents' house, go to sleep, and then wake up refreshed and visit with family the next day. So we leave late, we go Houston, San Antonio, Ozona, and then the next stop is Fort Stockton. So we stopped in Fort Stockton, gassed up, and then there's that long stretch of highway right after the exit, or not the exit, but like the junction for you to either go to El Paso or back up to Dallas. So after we pass that junction, the music stops. We're using Apple Music. So we just kind of figured that maybe we were in a place that didn't have great service or, the internet connectivity was low. We didn't think anything of it, but it was dead silence all of a sudden. So, it's dead silence. And for whatever reason, my husband and I were talking to each other, facing each other. We both stop mid-sentence and we look out the front window and we see 2 animal legs, that are walking very slowly in the lane in front of us. So at first, and this is what I remember it looking like. I was so freaked out and it happened so fast that I just, this is the best I can do to describe it to you guys. So bear with me. So it looked like the hind legs of like a coyote, right? And then like the top part of it was completely dark and like shapeless, but you knew that there was like a top part. So it was like a shadow figure with animal legs. We can kind of see that it's walking on all fours, I guess you can say. And then it stands up and it walks even slower. And as we get close to it, it just disappears into thin air. So It wasn't like it could be an animal that we ran over because A, we would have felt that, we would have heard it. It just disappeared. It didn't run off into the darkness because we would have seen that. And like I'm telling you, it was walking very, very, very slow. Something else that stood out to us was, you know, a lot of animals out there, when they try to cross, they run across or they're just standing still, but you can easily see like their eyes and their face and everything. But this was just a pair of legs with a dark mass on top that was walking very slowly. I was today years old when I found out that that was the Dogman of Texas, but my husband and I have seen it. We had no idea what it was, and it freaked us out.
Early morning, about this time of year, about 3 years ago, I was in the house. I looked out. I saw something walking up the side of the road towards the house. When I saw it out the back window, I noticed its gait was a little different. Somebody had seen before. So I came up to the closer window and looked out on the road and watched the thing walk past the house, past my mailbox. Its gait was a little bouncy. It wasn't a normal human gait. And I noticed its head was not really human either. It's kind of a doggish head with a short snout kind of look to it. Anyway, after I saw it walk past the mailbox, which I'm going to say it was somewhere around 6 foot or a little taller based on how tall it looked when it's past the mailbox. At that point, I was in the house, in the middle of 20 feet from the window. I went directly to the door. I went out the door. I walked down the side of the house to the edge of the sidewalk to about the area I'm standing now. And I looked at the intersection, and I looked at the road across from me. I looked to the road to the right. I looked to the road to the left. And it wasn't anywhere. So I thought to myself, where'd this thing go? So then I walked out onto the road, and I stood in front of the fence here at the intersection, looked down the road again, up the road, and across the road. I still couldn't see it. And then I looked catty corner into the open field over there, and what had been walking on 2 legs is now walking away from me on 4 legs. And when I looked at it, it was probably 100 feet from me at the most. And then it stopped, turned around, stared right at me. It definitely had like a snout-looking face, ears. Eyes were dark, proportionate to the head. And then it just turned, and we just stared at one another for 10 seconds or so. And then it didn't make a sound, didn't snarl, didn't threaten me in any way. We stared at one another. And then it just turned slowly away from me and continued walking away through the field and disappeared.
Can you describe the size of the snout?
It looked like a dog kind of looking snout, but it wasn't long like normal dogs. It was like, and it wasn't really short like a pug either. It was shorter than like a collie snout, but it was much bigger than like a pug would look. So it did have a snout, but it wasn't wasn't a long snout. It was short.
What did the actual nose look like?
Just like a regular old nose.
More like a dog than a human.
Like a dog except it wasn't. Dogs kind of like taper to more of a point. This thing was a little broader. It wasn't, because it was shorter. It didn't really like taper down. It was more like it was broad, and then it just kind of like cut off. It like squared off at the end.
And can you describe the ears?
On the side of the head, a little pointy, not floppy, not huge, but definitely kind of like more of a pointy look than a floppy look.
Can you describe, again, when it was walking out here, when you first saw it, can you describe again the way it was walking and what it was?
I noticed the lower part of the leg had a bend in it towards the rear of the animal or whatever it was, and its gait wasn't a human gait. It was more of a kind of like a springy, but kind of like it wasn't heel to toe. It was more like heel and then a drop and then it raised itself back up.
Mm-hmm.
It definitely wasn't a human gait.
And you say you're a chiropractor?
Yeah, I'm a chiropractor.
So you know anatomy and so forth?
Yeah, I know anatomy. I know a little bit about gaits.
Yeah.
But I'm not a anthropologist or a zoologist, but I know that this was not typical of a human gait. It was different.
And it was definitely on two legs.
It was definitely on two legs coming up the road. And like I said, I watched it go by, and then I was like, what is that, or who is that, or So I came out of the house to get a better look. And by the time I got out of the house, it wasn't on the road anymore. It had gone diagonally across the street away from the house into the cut cornfield. And at that point in time, instead of being on two legs, now it was on four legs and was walking away from me.
At that time, there was a doe on the right-hand side, and she jumped up and ran off to the right through the woods. But all the time, now we're seeing this, it's on the ground. It's on all fours. And it's tracking, like back, how a dog will put the nose to the ground, and it's tracking back and forth. And we're still, it's like, oh my gosh, what is that? Because we have to pass it. We have to go there. And we got closer, and then finally, what got me was it came up onto two legs. Oof. And it's like, it's got the head, and its body is man-sized body. And it went off into the woods on two legs.
I just had something happen to me years ago that it opened up and closed some portals in my mind, if you will, as opposed when you go along the thoughts of monsters don't exist. They're just in books and Hollywood movies. But I'm telling you, you're never going to see a werewolf, Dogman, Bigfoot in your life because they're not real. Let me say this emphatically. Wrong, wrong, wrong. These things exist. And should you be unfortunate enough to see one, your life is going to change. When I had my encounter, or after I had my encounter, and I got all these years to think about stuff, I think within the first 7 days, I got kind of pissed off. Now, the reason I was pissed off is because ever since I was little, my parents tell me there's no monster in the closet. There's nothing up under your bed. No, there's nothing waiting around the side of the house when you go to take the trash out. And yet, I'm standing a few feet away from a monster. So I'm like, why would my parents lie to me? Why would they not prepare me for what the frick is out there in the world? And I had to come to grips with it because they didn't know. It wasn't done maliciously. It was just to tell you this to keep you from being afraid of the dark. And my father was right. The dark can't hurt you. The dark can't hurt you. What lurks in the dark is what can tear your rooter from your tutor.
I don't know anything about that. I never was into that. I never thought about it. Every once in a while, somebody would talk about going hiking and going squatching, and I never thought about any of that stuff till now. And it took like 2-3 steps. It didn't wobble. It knew how to walk. It took a couple steps, and it dropped down on all fours. Now, before I tell you what it did, what else it did, looking at that thing, it had the head of a dog or a wolf, but it had like a long snout. I would say 5 inches, 6 inches maybe, like a thin, long snout. It had, I'm telling you, I was probably, let me say this, I was probably 15, 20 feet from it. That's it, 15, 20 feet.
Wow.
My headlights are right on it. And I'm shaking. And the teeth were white as ivory. And I would say 3 or 4 inches long. The 2 main canines. The rest were smaller, probably about 4 in between the canines. And then the 2 on the bottom were probably an inch long, 1.5 inches. Not as long as the top 2. It just looked at me. And that look, hold on. That look sent a chill through me. I got that chill now. So cold. The legs were hairy, but not totally covered, like it was real thin. And muscular. The thighs came down to a knee. The knee went back. The shins came down. I don't want to say it had haunches like a dog. To me, it looked more like it had paws for back legs.
And I look over at the screen on the monitor for my daughter's room, and I look at my daughter, and the first thing I catch in my eye is these 2 amber-colored eyes and these hairy ears and the snout. This is a Dogman. This is right outside my daughter's window. Her bed is directly in front of this window, which is downstairs, an entire flight of stairs down, an entire floor down. I look at this camera. Through the camera, I see this Dogman in the window. I go nuts. I'm scared out of my mind. My heart's pounding. I grab my pistol. I get out of the bed. Immediately, my wife wakes up. What are you doing? What are you doing? I run downstairs. As soon as I run downstairs, I'm trying to be as quiet as possible. I don't remember at the time, even though it was a matter of days ago, I don't remember if I was being as quiet as I possibly could have. I would like to have think that I was. I don't know if I was because of the adrenaline rushing through me. All I thought about was getting down there as quickly as possible because I don't want this Dogman reaching through the screen. The window is open. You crank the crank and it opens at a 45-degree angle. I don't want this Dogman reaching through the screen, grabbing my 6-month-old daughter and pulling her out of the screen. I'm watching this on my camera. I'm seeing this Dogman outside the window, and I see this grin on its face. My fear is that it's going to grab her and it's going to take her out of the window, smash its claw through the window, and pull her out.
I immediately grab my pistol and I go downstairs, what I think is quietly. I get down to the door and I smash the door open real fast. As soon as I do, immediately I'm looking into the window. For less than a second, I see him. I see the same type of Dogman that I had seen previously in the woods with Gene. The tall ears, the tassels at the top of the ears, the snout sticking out in front of it, its bright white teeth. Its mouth is not open. Its teeth hang freely on each side of its mouth. This creature doesn't have to open its mouth to reveal its teeth. I have had more than one encounter with this creature. I'm starting to slowly get more familiar with it. I open my daughter's room, which only has a nightlight in the very corner of Tinkerbell, mind you, so it's pink and white. And I see this pink and white reflection bouncing off of the screen, which also has a shine to it. And I see the Dogman on the other side of this. And all I could do at that point was yell, ah, and scream. At that point, now I've got my wife up. Now my daughter's up. Dogman immediately ducks down, and he's gone. All I could see was from his left and right shoulder, from the lower part of the neck up. I could see his snout. His teeth were hanging out. His ears were sticking up, and I could see the tassels on top. That's all that I could see of him. Now, mind you, this is on the first floor. But this window is 9 feet up in the air. Okay? This is not a window that's on a lower portion of the house. I measured it. If you were to have looked through the window as this Dogman was, you would have to be 8.5 to 9 foot tall at your shoulders, which was exactly where he was. So I'm going to assume that he was 9, almost 10 foot to the top of his ears. So at this point, I see him drop out of the picture. He's gone.
So this story that I'm going to tell you, it's horrific. It literally sounds like the beginning of a horror story, but in fact, the reality is so much worse. On February 15th, 2019, a 77-year-old woman was out for a morning walk when she was viciously attacked, killed, and partially eaten by some unknown animals. This occurred in Beaufort, North Carolina. Per the county officials, they stated they had ruled out bears, alligators, and coyotes via DNA testing. They have, in fact, eliminated any wild animals indigenous to the area. It wasn't until weeks later, when they received the actual medical examiner report, that anybody had some sort of clue as to what may have attacked and killed this woman, who, by the way, her name was Brenda Hamilton, a 77-year-old teacher. Per the medical examiner report made by Anna Marie Clark of the University of Florida Veterinary Forensic Laboratory, she wrote, "It is my opinion that Mrs. Hamilton was attacked by dogs. This is based on the physical blood splatter and DNA evidence. However, it remains a mystery as to which dogs killed Brenda Hamilton on February 15, 2019, as DNA evidence found no clear match to canines living in the area," the report states. No clear match to canines at all. The case was closed, but questions still remain. What killed Brenda Hamilton? What ate her? That wasn't dogs. What it was, we'll never know. We can only guess and assume and speculate.
I saw like a werewolf creature as a kid. That's the only thing I've ever.
And you're fully confident in what you saw.
In my parents' house, there was like a screen door that went out from like a sunroom. I was probably like 7 years old.
Yeah.
And I saw this thing, and I remember looking at it multiple times, and it was like in the window. It was kind of grinning at me, and it had this like red eyes, and I was like, this is not going away when I look, and I screamed and ran, told my parents. But the reason I remember it though is because I would run from one room to the next for years after that. And I wouldn't look out that window. But then I was listening to Sasquatch shows and people were saying that they see the Dogman, the Dogman, the Dogman. I'm like, the heck is the Dogman? I know what the Sasquatch is. What is the Dogman? And then I'm like, oh my gosh.
That's what you saw.
I saw the same thing.
What is the Dogman?
It's the werewolf.
Does it walk up on two legs?
Yeah, it does both. Sometimes it runs off. I mean, it's just your classic werewolf. Most of them have the werewolf face.
Classic upright werewolf.
Now, pretty terrifying.
These eye shines that I saw that were, next to the mailbox, the eye shine were at a spot where I would say, let's say it was sitting down. You're talking about probably 4.5, 5 feet tall off the ground. So I can just imagine if it was setting up. If it was on the ditch, on the down part of the slope, it would have to be 5 to 7 feet. I'm going to say probably 6, give or take. So the eye shine was there. They were looking towards the roads back and forth slowly. And then it looked at me for a few seconds and looked back towards the road. And, so I made sure the dog got inside because if the dog saw it, he would have gotten after it and, locked him up, came back, nothing. Well, actually, no, not that day. I went to go look at the, where it was. And I remember going back to the mailbox, nothing was there. And as I'm going back up the driveway, towards my right side, if I'm walking towards the house, has, bushes and trees to my right. And these bushes and trees to my right, they were thick, and at one point they had an opening in one section, you can see through it. And as I'm walking, all of a sudden, I had a headlamp. Again, the headlamp wasn't very strong back then. I bought others later on that would eventually, see further out. But this thing was walking and I saw a glimpse of it through that opening. You can see the outline. And I stopped and I remember talking. I can't say I was trying to talk to it, but I was just trying to talk to ease my mind. Cause it's an old moment. You're close to this thing. And I remember I began to whimper as a puppy. You know how puppies whimper when they have a mom or a bigger dog, and they want their attention, but they don't want to seem like they're trying to be overpowering. So they kind of, whimper a little bit. And this thing I remember stopped, turned its head, looked at me, cocked it to the side as I was doing that. And all I said to my mind was, you understand that? And then it cocked its head back and it kind of went down, and into the bush again. And I walked away. Then as I walked away, I got to the house and I might say to myself, I gotta go back. This is crazy. And I went back towards the bush. When I went back to the bush, I would hear it, but I couldn't see it. And that was the confirmation of what we were seeing was actually a Dogman to us, because I saw the outline. Another time, it was in that specific spot. And I went back inside, I came back and it was gone. I've seen it multiple times on the other side. The grass was tall and you could see his eyes looking, through, cause on the other side there was also another ditch. Cause the road is here and then on both sides it would just go down. And you'd have the top of the road and his eyes, you'd see his eyes here, but you could always tell what it was because of the size of the eyeballs. Remember one day my parents got home, they were visiting, my son was young, he was probably 1.5 years, maybe 2 years old, a 1.5 years. And, they had come to visit. Now we normally do bonfires at nighttime, outside, but we live next to the Rocktown Marsh. So at some points in the year, mosquitoes get very bad. And the mosquitoes were bad that day. So we decided to just, stop the bonfire and all of us went inside. And, so we threw water on the fire pit And when we threw water in the fire pit, you have this whoosh, this snap, crackle, pop, and when that happened, there was a Dogman several yards out in the cornfields, and the cornfields were already, probably 2 or 3 feet high. I can't quite remember, but they weren't stubble, so they were higher up. This thing gets up, looks at us with this fear response, and the head was shifting back and forth, looking back and forth really fast, and he would look at us and look back and forth, and that's why I say fear response, because his actions were showing that he wasn't comfortable being there, seeing the smoke, hearing the crackle. The more water we threw on it, the more snap, crackle, pop, and the more he would do that, and this thing ran towards the trail, and as he's running towards the trail, he'd go on all fours, and he'd go down 2s and 4s, until finally he got to the trail, and I told my neighbor, let's go towards the trail, see if we see this thing. And we ran towards the trail. I got my flashlight, and I had a knife with me, and we went, on the road towards the trail. And when we got to the trail, we couldn't see it, but we had bushes on either side. I told my neighbor, hey, listen, let's go back home and let's forget about this, because in reality, if this thing, decides to confront us, we won't be able to see it because the bushes are close, on this trail. So we were walking back, and, my neighbor goes and says, did you hear that? I wasn't hearing nothing, my mind was kind of focused on, what we had seen back at the property. And as we were walking, he repeats it twice. Did you hear that? Like, no, I don't hear nothing. And when we got to the house, I went back to grabbing my stuff that was outside, and all of a sudden I see this black thing just run from the ditch on the right side of the road over the road into our property and stand right next to one of the trees. So now I'm seeing half of its face, and I'm like calling my neighbor, come here, and I'm screaming at him, come here, and he's like, I'm coming, and like, let's go, come here. And I shifted my body to like run towards the side of the house, like to try to get him, let's go, get over here. And by the time I came back, gone. This thing had vanished. So then I knew, okay, I can't follow this guy. This guy he doesn't like being chased. He doesn't like the fire. And that was confirmed by other landowners, that if fire was introduced, they did not like it. They'd scatter like cockroaches. For the most part, right? And those that didn't scatter were just simply not afraid. So you had 2 versions, right? You had 2, rather they'd run like cockroaches, or they would just stand there like, I know that is, and probably those have probably never gotten burned by them. So, stuff like that would happen. I would take out my dogs, and they would come from behind me, or and I would always surprise them, because my dog would look at them, and I would always know they were there, and I would say something and turn around real quick, and they would dart into the cornfields. But a lot of things happened in that property that made me aware of what they may have not liked it and what they may have liked. And that brought me into the field. And when that brought me into the field, I would try these things out. And by trying these things out, I would know, okay, this worked in my property. It worked over here. It worked over there. It didn't work here. It didn't work there. And then I had questions to the property owners that I've already talking to. Hey, when you did this, or if you did this, what would happen? And they would give me, their response, and they would correlate with what I was doing. And before you know it, I would begin to analyze in my head what worked, what didn't, what did, what not.
Lure hit the water. A creature up in the bush to the right started screaming and running through the bush towards me. You could hear it smashing branches out of the way, just screaming and roaring as loud as it could. And you could hear its footsteps running through the bush, and it was running, crash, and then you'd hear it smash a branch out of the way, and you could see the bushes moving as this creature was running towards me. And it stopped just out of sight of me. And at that time it had stopped, it started howling at me. I hooked the fish, I'm winding it in, and I was thinking, oh no, what's that? And I'd already cast out, and I'd just give it a little bit of a wind. And as I'd given it a wind, it'd bring the lure in so I could get out of there. I hooked the fish, so I'm fighting the fish back to the kayak, and this creature's still screaming and roaring as loud as it could. And you'd actually feel it in your chest when it was roaring. And I was starting to panic, and I got the fish back to the kayak and peeled it up, pulled the hooks out. As soon as I chucked it into the water, this creature went to a whole another level. this roars got so much louder, and you could hear it smashing branches out of the way, and the cockatoos were actually going ballistic at this time. And now that I think about it, I was thinking, like, these cockatoos might have known this creature was already there, and that's why they were squawking and going off as I was coming down the river. So I chucked the fish into the water, and as I just decided I'm just going to turn around and paddle back to the car and act like I didn't hear it. As I started to turn around, I heard a voice in my head say, "Go now or you will die." And I don't know what it was. I'd never heard that voice before. It wasn't my thoughts or anything, but it was definitely a voice in my head said, "Go now or you'll die." So I've turned around, just paddled off nice and gently, just acting like I didn't hear what was going on. I was just trying to play silly and not let this creature know that I was actually scared. I thought if I panic here and take off, this creature's liable to take off after me and come and get me. And I'd gotten about 50 metres down the river and it just stopped. Didn't hear another roar, didn't hear another branch being broken, didn't even hear a twig snap. The Dogman in Taylor, Mississippi, a 2014 Dogman encounter. It was a cool spring night in May, around 11:40 p.m. A local couple in their early 30s were heading home to Oxford after visiting family in Taylor, Mississippi. The road was a winding 2-lane stretch cutting through thick woods. There were no streetlights, just the glow of their headlights bouncing off the asphalt. They were chatting when the woman suddenly tensed and said, "Did you see that?" Before the man could answer, something bolted across the road about 50 yards ahead. It moved fast, but not like a deer. It was upright with long arms and a bushy tail. And something about the way it ran was all wrong. The couple would later describe it as a forward lean, like a linebacker charging. They braked hard, and that's when it stopped. Right in the middle of the road. Turned and looked directly at them. The headlights lit it up, at least partially. It was grayish-brown, covered in coarse fur, with a massive head, like a timber wolf, but broader at the neck and chest. Ears perked upright. Snout long and twitching. The eyes glowed a sickly yellow-white, not red, not amber, and the man later described them as, like old headlights catching fog, not natural reflection, not deer eyes. Its arms were too long for a canine, hanging low, almost to the knees, and the legs, thick, jointed backward like a dog's hind legs. It stood well over 7 feet tall. They didn't move. The creature didn't either. It just stared, for maybe 10 seconds, and then, it turned, walked off the road, and disappeared into the tree line. The man floored it. They didn't speak for the rest of the drive. The next day they returned in daylight, hoping to prove it was just a misidentified bear. But there were no tracks, no signs of anything crossing the road, and when they lined up where it stood, the woman realized the head had been a full foot above the center of their windshield. This wasn't a bear, this wasn't a man. This was something else. To this day, neither of them will drive that road at night, and the man admitted privately, "I don't even like talking about it. I know what I saw. I just wish I didn't." Taylor, Mississippi is just south of Oxford, surrounded by dense pine forests, hunting land, and swamplands.
In the darkness of the night, in the quiet corners of rural America, something unexplainable and terrifying has been lurking in the shadows. Over the past 15 years, reports from Michigan, Wisconsin, and Indiana have surfaced, detailing the eerie disappearances of farmers and workers, all under the most bizarre and unsettling circumstances. Authorities insist these deaths were caused by bears, wolves, or accidents, but those who survived know the truth. This is the story of the Dogman, a creature that doesn't belong in our world, but haunts it just the same. October 23, 2008 was a day like any other on Robert McIntyre's farm in Gladwin County, Michigan. As night fell and the temperature dropped, Robert sat in his living room, watching TV. But then, something happened that would change everything. He heard his neighbor's dogs barking frantically, a sound he had heard before, but never to this extent. The dogs weren't just barking, they were howling in fear. Robert stepped out onto his porch, and what he saw sent a chill down his spine. The night was pitch black, save for the faint glow of lights from Jim Collins' house, his neighbor and close friend for over 15 years. The dogs were still howling, then, suddenly, they went silent. It wasn't the calm silence of a quiet night. It was the kind of silence that makes the hair stand up on the back of your neck. Robert's concern deepened, but then, something even more unsettling happened. He saw a flashlight moving from Jim's house toward the corral, and he watched as Jim slowly circled the cattle, checking on them. But then, the flashlight stopped, and the light pointed straight toward the cornfield, a field that had been harvested earlier that month, but still held dried stalks standing tall in rows. For a moment, Robert wondered what Jim had seen, but before he could process it, a blood-curdling scream echoed across the field. It was a sound unlike anything Robert had ever heard, a scream somewhere between an animal's howl and a human's agonizing cry. The scream lasted only 5 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. The flashlight fell to the ground, pointing toward the sky. Robert wasted no time. He grabbed his rifle, a double-barrel shotgun meant for hunting deer, and sprinted toward Jim's farm. As he approached, he noticed the flashlight still on the ground and directed its beam toward the cornfield.
I must be living under a rock because a couple posts ago, I told a story of an allegedly true account of somebody or a few people experiencing a dog-like creature. And very quickly, I learned from all of you that this is some Dogman creature. It's a thing that I never heard of before. I've heard werewolf stories. Is this like the same as Dogman, or are they two different things? Since that story, I've been getting messages, comments, and videos sent to me about their own accounts of this Dogman. One of them comes from one of my followers, and I'm not sure if he wants to remain anonymous or not, but he tells the story of his encounter with this Dogman. He said that this happened back in the 90s, which is around the same time that other story I told took place. He said at the time, he was living in Texas. He said he was married with a son, and his in-laws owned a ministry, and they were having a late-night sermon. He said he'd heard this sermon before, so he decided to go take a drive in his truck. He was driving around an area where not a lot of people lived, and he came across one of the properties that looked like it was recently purchased. He said he could tell because that property in particular was very nicely cleaned up. He said about 50 feet into the property, there was this really big oak tree, and he noticed something looked like it was climbing down from this tree. It seemed pretty big, and he was taken aback, so he pulled over to get a better look and see what the heck was climbing down this tree. He opened the door, got out of the truck, left the door open, and stepped a few more feet away from the truck to get a closer look. He could hear the sounds of its claws tearing into the tree bark as it grasped the limbs on its way down. He noted that it had really long fingers and claws. As it made its way down the tree, he could see just how tall this thing really was. He said its back was huge and wide, and then it narrowed down as it got to his waist, almost creating like a V shape. And he said he noticed it had a light brown tail that looked a little bit short for the rest of its body size, probably about a foot in length. This thing had the head of a wolf and the arms of a human, including its back, and its legs were very muscular. He said that when it finally got to the ground, he would assess that it was over 8 feet tall, and it was so muscular that you could see the details of its muscles through its fur. So this thing's back is still to him, and he backs up and he goes into his truck to grab one of his pew-pews. He aimed at his buttocks and gave it one good shot to the left side, and all it did was flinch and slowly look over its shoulder to stare straight at him. Almost like, why did you just do that? So the fact that it didn't do much to this huge creature, he is freaking out now. He throws his pew-pew into the truck, jumps in, and he hightails it out of there down the road. He said there was no exit down the road that he went, so he was forced to turn around and go back past that area. So he said he's never gone so fast in his life. He must have been going 100 miles an hour flying past that property. He said he went back to the church and he just sat there quietly till it was done, and he's never told anybody about it since, until now. He lives in Wisconsin now, and he's been here for about 20 years. His son is 36 now, and he tells him, if you ever go into the woods, never go alone, and always take your pew-pew.
Thank you for watching. If these Dogman encounters sent a chill down your spine, make sure to subscribe and drop your thoughts in the comments below. As always, stay safe, stay aware, question everything, and remember, out there in those woods, something might be watching.